Over the last year or so, there's been a growing trend of people around my age shooting pictures with digicams. Whether this is just a fad like film photography was a few years ago, or whether this is a response to people being sick of how photos from their smartphones look, or people appreciating having a dedicated device with one purpose, just like was the case with iPods a few years ago, it's anyone's guess. But when I was on a recent holiday to China and Japan, I definitely did see a handful of people taking pictures with point and shoots, so this is a thing that's happening. I also wanted a digicam, however not for the aesthetic of the images. Not only do I really dislike the old school digital photo look, with no dynamic range and the flash constantly having to fire because of the small sensor not capturing enough light, but I never liked that look, ever since I got into photography when I was 15. So why did I want to pick up a point and shoot? Because I miss having a decent zoom, man. Samsung had a capable 10x sensor in the S23 Ultra, and then suddenly the industry decided that 5x is enough. Hint, it's not. Plus, smartphone RAWs can be quite difficult to manipulate. Phone sensors may be comparatively large, but they do have a lot of flaws that you need to correct, which is why modern smartphones have such overprocessed images in the first place. With a dedicated camera, you are in control of everything, from the settings before you shoot, to how the picture will be processed. Of course, I already own a professional camera, that's what I'm shooting on now, but having a camera that weighs nothing and can easily slip into any pocket and isn't a phone is nice. So I needed to find a digicam with a good zoom range, 30x or above, and with RAW support. That was my main criteria. A decent burst mode would be nice for when I use it at gigs where professional cameras aren't permitted, but that's secondary. Real 1080p video recording and not 1440 by 1080 would also be good. Unsurprisingly, that didn't leave me with a lot of choice for cameras that I could buy. I ended up settling on the only camera that I could find in my price range that had RAW, and this is the Lumix TZ70. Well, I could have got a TZ80 with 18 megapixels for around £50 more. However, this technically has the trade-off of small pixels within the same sensor size of 1/2.3 inches, meaning worse low-light performance. Since I am already talking about the specs, we have a 24 to 720mm lens, 35mm equivalent, a sub VGA resolution non-tiltable display, and a slightly above VGA resolution electronic viewfinder. Video is contained as AVC HD, which I dislike, but it is at least available in progressive for full 1080p, and 50 FPS can be selected. JPEG, RAW, and RAW plus JPEG can be selected, and the image output is 12.8 megapixels. We have a full manual mode. The ring around the lens can be customized to either change manual settings or be used as a more precise zoom ring instead of the zoom rocker, which unfortunately on my unit is temperamental. There are different AF modes including AF tracking, customizable single point AF and a manual focus mode. Likewise, you can also change metering mode from a few options. There are 2 customizable buttons on the device, and you can change to have an EV lock instead of the usual EV and AF lock. There are different settings that you can program for the camera to keep when powered down, such as focal length. So if you are shooting at 720mm, if you turn the camera off and on again, it will return to the same focal length. We have a few burst modes. Though with the camera's tiny buffer, I was able to get about 3 raw images before the buffer filled, and that left me with 1 image per second. I believe you can double the burst rate to a consistent 6 frames per second if you shoot JPEG. We have an exposure burst mode for shooting in HDR, a 3cm macro mode at 24mm, automatic display brightness, which I can't believe is here on a point and shoot and yet not on my Sony Alpha, and speaking of which, the display definitely gets bright enough, although a tiltable screen would have been really handy. Also, unlike some other point and shoots, you can permanently turn the flash off, heck yeah. We also have an AF illuminator light that you can turn off. You also have the option of a digital spirit level and a million different grid lines, although I just stuck to the usual rule of thirds. We also have Wi-Fi for being able to view your photos and videos on your phone, although it doesn't seem like you can transfer RAW files that way. You can also do live view via your phone, and this works better than Sony's Imaging Edge, as a surprise to absolutely no one. The app for this camera is astonishingly still available on the App Store, which is really awesome to see. The camera also has a lot of in-camera options and features, such as turning time-lapse photos, which you can do, into a video, saving you having to bash your head with doing so in Premiere Pro, plus other stuff like wacky effects, red eye reduction, etc, etc. So I hope that you can see that this camera has a very surprising suite of features for what is just a simple point and shoot. With the limited buttons and no touchscreen, it is a chore to change settings on the fly, but if you work smart, you can capture things such as wildlife and airplanes, especially since the AF is fast enough. It's not quite like a modern mirrorless camera for sure, but I have used cameras with worse AF, cough cough Fuji. So after having taken over 100 pictures with the Lumix so far, what do I think? Well, not to sound too pretentious, but I do think the photographs can look rather filmic. This is thanks to the noise that is present in seemingly every ISO setting. It can get quite unbearable if you go above ISO 1600, but for what it's worth, it's 2026 and you can use the AI denoiser in Lightroom. If you stay under 50% denoising, the generative AI is very minimal to completely off, so you get to reduce much, but not all, of the noise while keeping the picture looking authentic. The noise also helps to hide some of the shortcomings of this camera, mainly that AF sometimes misses the mark on what's meant to focus on, or some occasional motion blur. But overall I was really impressed with how I was able to take pictures at night and have so many usable photos. My A7 Mark III has been a headache for nighttime photography without a tripod due to the painfully slow sensor readout, so being able to shoot pictures at 25th of a second without blur has been nice. It reminds me of my Fuji cameras. The RAWs are very easy to manipulate, and most of my Sony Lightroom presets have been very easily transferable to the Lumix photos, which saved me from having to waste time making presets again. The TZ80 does have the advantage of camera profiles in the RAW files, which unfortunately the TZ70 does not include, which is a great shame. The white balance has been on point, the exposure is usually bang on, and for non-extreme lighting situations, like the end of a tunnel for example, there is enough dynamic range to bring out the shadows or turn down the highlights, though the latter tends to be the hardest to control. We occasionally have some rolling shutter, such as with these aeroplane photographs, but on the day-to-day it's not really noticeable. Occasionally, especially at wider focal lengths, we can see some fringing around the edges of the photographs, and at telephoto we do see more chromatic aberration. But it's not the worst quality lens that I've ever seen, and while I know that the images are all edited, and therefore this sounds more like me being up my own butt, I am really happy with the colours from this camera. Whether sunny or overcast, I was able to get pictures that I was happy with. Alright, let me quickly touch on video quality. It's a bit fuzzy, the AF drifts in and out. When at telephoto you see the stabilization do weird things to the frame, but I did use it in a loud Christmas market where there was a woman singing through speakers scattered throughout the market and the audio wasn't distorted, so give it a pass. Not amazing, but again, the fact that I can zoom in 30 times while recording with no digital crop is great. You can turn on digital crop when recording video, and you can also turn on audio zoom, but I don't like either option, so whatever. I do wish that there was a hot shoe and a microphone input so you could use your existing microphone, but I suppose compromises have to be made in such a small form factor. Overall, minus the broken zoom rocker, I'm extremely pleased that I got this camera. I think for sure it's not the best at anything. The AF could be a bit smarter, the video could be less fuzzy, the pictures realistically could do far less grain, especially at lower ISOs, and the lens could do with less fringing. But equally, unlike so many point shoots, this isn't just a dud, shooting boring box standard photos that I guess are crazy now with a subset of my generation. These images have a bit more soul to them, if I can use that word non-pretentiously. And for £200 seems like a fair price to pay for what the camera can do. Therefore, I'm excited to use a TZ70 in situations where bringing my alpha isn't particularly enjoyable or feasible. Let me know what you guys thought, as I'm interested in having a different perspective other than mine. And otherwise, thanks for watching this video.